Morning or afternoon. We'll just give it a couple of minutes just to ensure everyone can join and then we'll kick off. Hi, good morning. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today for our Super Women in Tech webinar. So I'm Naomi Basu, and I'm the Director of Compliance and Risk here at SGI, and I'll be hosting the webinar today. So SGI, if you don't already know, we're a technology talent solutions provider, and we specialise in recruitment and consulting. Alongside our commitment to delivering innovative solutions, we pride ourselves on fostering communities, inclusion and opportunities for women and underrepresented groups in the technology space. So Super Women in Tech was one of the first communities we launched as a business, and with the sole purpose of connecting, amplifying and empowering women in technology. And throughout the years, we've hosted webinars, live meetups and opportunities to spotlight voices across industries and bring tech communities together. So if you are interested in getting involved and hosting your own session, please message us directly on Meetup. And we're always looking for new women to spotlight and share their experiences and knowledge in this community. So before we kick things off and introduce Harpreet, just a few housekeeping notes. So today's session will run for about an hour. We will be recording the webinar, so we will share the link afterwards. Feel free to use a chat to engage with other attendees today. The chat is being monitored, so any inappropriate disruptive messages will be removed. If you have any questions, and we very much welcome them, so please use the Q&A button in the top bar. And then at the end of the presentation, we can put those to Harpreet and answer any questions sent in. And if you run into any tech issues, please send a message to the chat and our team will do what we can to assist you to get things up and running again. So with those notes, it's my pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker, Harpreet Dulai. So Harpreet is the Associate Director and Global Speed Mentoring Lead at EPAM Systems. Outside of her day job, she's the co-founder of Punjabi Force and a Salesforce mentor at Supermums. It's a community user group focused on bringing more voices into the Salesforce ecosystem. So I'll hand over to you, Harpreet, and thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Naomi. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully that's coming through right.
Yeah, we can see it.
Amazing. So if I just do that, perfect. And thank you everyone for joining as well. Some of you might be on their lunch break. Some of you might just be starting the day. So thank you very much. And I actually saw one person that was from Birmingham. So my family's actually from Birmingham. So big up Birmingham. Anyway, so as Naomi said, my name is Harpreet, and my talk today is going to be about managing a career break. So everyone can use emojis here. Can I get a thumbs up or an emoji for anybody that's currently on a career break? Let's see, any reactions? There we go. Lovely, lovely. Keep it coming. Okay, brilliant. And thumbs up for anybody that's thinking about a career break. Okay. So we've got a mixed audience here. Now, as we go through the talk, we will try and keep it to making sure it's level peggings with both coming out of a career break and going into one. But please, again, do ask questions if I still leaving you with questions in your head. And so hopefully we can give you some food for thought and takeaways, and you can really start applying this moving forward. Now, a good place to start in these kind of talks is actually to share with you my own story. And I've had a career break and most certainly did not have it planned. But what I wanted to share with you is the experience I had going into it, through it, and how I navigated out of the break. And nothing goes to plan, but that's often where the real growth happens. And Naomi and I were actually talking about this, and we can talk about it later, is how glad we were when we took it. And hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? So, but a little bit about me. So, I have been working in the tech industry now for over 11 years. I have a computer forensics and security degree. And so I started really my career out as customer support and have since then worked my way through working now at EPAM as an associate director. Every stage, every career opportunity I've had has always helped me step into the next and to the next and apply that and allow me to be where I am now. And sometimes, especially earlier on in my career, I didn't realize that it was a stepping stone into the next part of my career. And so that's quite, again, it was quite nice just to have a think back and actually realize that that's enabled me to be where I am now. So, aside from my roles, I've always been huge on people. I'm a huge people's person, and every support that I've received, I've always tried to pave that forward. And so I've led teams, I've led consultant teams, I've led projects. I've sometimes had to manage upwards. Everyone will have to do that at some point. And yeah, as Naomi was saying with the mentoring, I have officially and unofficially mentored individuals. And most of these individuals are actually trying to get into tech from not having a tech background. But also some of them were just trying to get back into the working world with some experience in that. And then lastly, what really underpins who I am is actually the biggest driver is to be more than a seat at the table. Yes, I work for a global company. Yes, I'm in senior leadership position, but it's always about shaping the conversations, helping to shape the conversations, but actually leaning into it and putting it into practice. Otherwise, it's just effort and I guess planning that goes nowhere. So with that, obviously, as you know, I had a break before coming into Well, actually, I'll tell you when I had that break. But what that actually helped me and enabled me with is I was able to be more intentional with my time. So with my break, after coming back to it, I'm now an associate director at EPAM. Also with my intentional time, with the women at EPAM community, I'm the global speed mentoring lead. So again, trying to pave that forward. And outside of work, as Naomi said, I've co-founded a community. And again, the driver for me was what I learned in that time, in that breakaway. How can we start having conversations outside of organizations? How can we bring people together and bolster our community? So I was able to be more intentional with my time, my energy. I was really able to ask myself those hard questions. Who do I want to be? And just start being that person. So that was a quick snippet, but let me show you about my career path. As I was saying earlier, I started out at university, went into customer support, and as you can see, there are all tech roles. And you can probably see by this career path, be like, okay, surely she had it all figured out, right? And it just looks so simple that the next role is progressing on to the next role, but not at all. I came into a global role and decided life had changed, and I took out time in my career. Now, again, you might be thinking 3 months? Is that it? Shane took 3 months break. I'm here on a year, 2 years break. And actually, I have to say, I was talking to Naomi about this earlier, it felt like 3 years. And I stopped working, didn't have anything to move into next. So I was really starting from a standstill position. And if anything you take away today, it's knowing that if you are in that standstill position, try to use some of my experience or some of the skills we're going to talk about later. Or if you're planning on having a break, is going, okay, I'm going to be intentional with this time. Are there little pockets that I can do in that time away so that you aren't feeling like you're not leaning into anything in your time out? So let me talk to you about the real story as to why I had that pause. And I grew out of the company. My values were mismatched, really misaligned. And again, this is all the internal growth that's happening, and it happens. So you were one person when you went into the company, and through that growth, that might just not align anymore. My home life balance really started to be something I was prioritizing. And in earlier parts of my career, it was more around being outwardly successful in my career. And so I had a lot of time to focus on it. And again, priorities shifted. My life was changing. My priorities were changing, and it was moving in a direction that the work commitments didn't align. And I think sometimes that's the hardest thing to really accept with yourself. And this is why we're obviously having the honest conversation here. But it wasn't about giving up. And I think that's a big thing for me. And if you are thinking about having time out, it's not about giving up or giving in. It's about choosing yourself for whatever reason you are about to have that break. And then again, feelings play a big factor. So, how I felt during it. So, I felt like I was falling behind. It seemed like everybody else was progressing, everything else was moving so fast. And I was the one that was stagnant and I wasn't moving anywhere. I felt really disconnected with myself. I felt really disconnected with where my career was going. Um, and it just made me feel really uncertain. And again, finances, that always plays a part as to why you're taking the time out, if you can take the time out. And so stepping away from even a society where your salary is your security, and because that's all I'd ever known coming out of university, I was really uncertain if this was actually going to be something I was going to be able to support myself with. Family expectations were a big one with me. Obviously, Indian, growing up in an Indian household, it wasn't ever heard of. And as soon as I told my parents, you can just imagine going, it's fine, just go out, look again, apply, you'll be back in a job soon. Rather than going, are you okay? Do you like take some time out, take out what you need? It was more, it's fine. You've had a day now. Go get back to it. And so I think I even helped them come along and into my thinking with it as well. A lot of worry, a lot of lack of confidence in this time. I didn't think that I would find my direction again. I honestly didn't think that I was able to jump back into even either a lateral move in terms of role or even a promotional role. And rusty. Even though it was 3 months out, I felt rusty because prior to that, I think I hadn't interviewed for an official role until maybe 5, 6 years ago, because you get to a point, or even in an industry where it's word of mouth and you have a conversation and you might send your CV, but you're having just a conversation. It wasn't, here's a 5-step interview process that you're going to have to follow. So that played a part in how I moved forward and how much time I decided to take out. So during my time out, what did I do? Now, I felt very anxious about sitting still, as I was saying about falling behind, but I still took some time out. I really tried to listen to myself in that time. But also, what I tried to do is lean into my superpower. So, my superpower with being proactive was, how can I help others? Because sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes supporting other people can be a selfish act. So, it could be that you're supporting them in their journeys, in their career growth, but also you're doing it to yourself at the same time. So I started mentoring individuals. I was helping them upskill in Salesforce. I helped them with their CVs, and generally just having one-to-one calls about how they're feeling through this process. And again, a little bit of reverse mentoring was happening as well. I also became a freelance teacher. So a lot of the time in my previous careers, I would have to implement, say, a solution, but also I would then teach users how to use said solution. So actually, I leaned into that part and I saw that there was a market to be able to teach. And so just to keep my skills sharp, my personal skills, and my technical skills sharp, I lead into being a freelance Salesforce teacher. I also upskilled myself. So what good is it if you're telling other people to do it and not doing it yourself? So I did also in that time upskilled myself and pass certifications. Again, applied and interviewed for roles. And the biggest thing for me during that time was I actually just listened to myself. And the listening to myself was this VMV framework. Vision. What future do I want? Mission. What am I doing to get there? And what's my internal rule set with my values that I will and won't accept? And essentially, it was as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. I listed down a list of vacancies, what the companies were like, whether they matched my vision, and whether they matched my values. And rather than applying to the ones that didn't, I simply just deselected it, didn't waste my time or energy with it. And again, that helped me really delist and reduce the noise, and also a bit of feeling like a failure, because as soon as you start applying to 10, 20, 30 job roles and you're not getting anything back, it's just because you're just throwing them out there hoping you get something rather than being intentional with your time. So that's enough about me. What I want us to acknowledge is that career breaks are the new normal, okay? And it's not just for younger generations. A lot more people are considering career breaks, like some of you on this call. Some of you have had them, but it's not always about having a career break just to be on maternity or paternity leave. There are other reasons in which one can have a career break. But what I want to do is just actually start with some facts, because I want us to all get comfortable that we aren't on our own and we're not alone in this piece of our life. So I did some research, but this was on the UK workforce, but you can take this as a kind of a general average, that actually 50% of UK workers all reported at least 1 month gap in their career. And even with that, 32% took minimum of 6 months. And so you can see that you might be in this percentage if you're currently on a career break, or if you're thinking about it, you're not the only one. And actually, younger professionals are choosing more intentional pauses in their career. And it's actually quite a fun label they have for it, which we'll go into in a little bit. But if we start with just breaking it down through the generations, Gen X's take less frequent time off, because this generation was typically the responsibility-driven generation. So the only time that would be taken off was maybe for caregiving, for raising a family, but they essentially were planning that time and more discerning about their responsibilities. Then we have millennials, that's my generation. And actually, even being in the consultative world, I saw a lot more of my peers starting to take sabbaticals. And they were starting to have these conversations with the companies I worked for, saying, okay, I want to take 6 months off to go traveling. Will you hold my role while I go and do that? Some were paying for them, and some weren't. So they are a lot more active in taking sabbaticals, planning them around taking a career pause. And most of the time, millennials are taking time out because of burnout, health, work-life balance. So we can start to see that this generation is starting to ask those hard questions. And now the Gen Zs are reframing it all. This generation is more about leading with well-being, with work environments aligning with values. And actually, they're classing this as micro retirements. So rather than waiting or working their whole adult career and then getting to a retirement, they're starting to build in those pockets. which I think is quite nice if you can do it, and if you want to do it. And they're almost simply saying, well, why not now? Because I want to do those things now and I can financially back myself, so why not? And they're massive on values. So this is the generation, and I think we see it even with the nightlife. Like, this generation isn't about all the stuff that previous generations were. They're more leaning into their well-being, how they feel in the work environments. And honestly, I don't blame them because COVID has changed a lot of this thinking for me. So I can only imagine with Gen Zs coming into the working world, how that's really framed it for them. So, with all of that being said, let's get into the details of your time out, or you're planning your time out. And I think what people often have said about careers is, or career breaks is, if you're going to have it, it's risky, or I might fall behind. Employers won't take me seriously if I have a massive chunk and I can't justify properly, like I haven't started a family. So, what I really want us to do, and I want us to focus on this quote here: a career break doesn't erase your experience, it changes how you tell your story. Because your experience, however short or long, it's your experience, it's your story. So I really want us to focus on that, whether you're coming back in or you're thinking about having a career break. But let's go into the reasons why people take career breaks. Again, I said it's not just about, say, starting a family. Yes, it can be about caregiving, but a lot of the time, I think we're seeing burnout as being why people are taking career breaks, especially in a fast moving industry like tech. Traveling, redundancy. And so there's a long list in terms of why people take career breaks. And so they never rarely go to plan. You might have a solid plan and you're like, yes, it's going to work. But then plans change, things change, and this can make your confidence dip and it can make you doubt yourself. I know that for sure. Like, I definitely doubted myself when I decided to stop working at the old company because I wondered whether I'd made the right decision for me and what I wanted to achieve in the future. But what I'm going to challenge you on here is I want you to reframe your experience. I want you to reframe why you're having the career break. I want you to reframe why you had the career break. And we're going to start building out these skills. So, whether it's you've had the career break or having the career break to help run family business, okay, what business skills are you brushing up on? What are you able to learn during that time? If it's raising children, how many times are you multitasking throughout the day? How much organizing are you having to do to make sure everybody has everything they need? How much conflict management are you dealing with on an hourly basis, especially if the kids are on holiday? And if you're traveling, what did you plan throughout your travel? How how much of that went to plan and didn't go to plan? Okay, the things that didn't go to plan, how were you able to think on your feet? How were you able to find a solution? So all of those things are now actually reframing the skills that you can put into practice going into your career or start to think about before you go back into it. And quite honestly, use the tech that you have at your disposal. So, yeah, you see where I'm going with this? So let's start reframing your experiences because they matter. They really do. and it's your story. Start owning your story. And that leads us nicely to this. This is you. Own your story. You matter. So does your story. So own it. And so, if you're from my generation and you know singer-songwriter Natasha Bedingfield, today is where your book begins. The rest is still unwritten. So start writing. Now, we're going to get into some practical steps, okay? And yes, this might be leaning more in towards the individuals that are looking to get back into it, but also for the people that are planning on having a career break, do have a think about this and see how you can lean into this with your time out. So, some of these practical steps, how to turn time away into value, all right? So, first things first, reframe, as we were talking about earlier, the gap before anyone else does. And it will just be as simple as writing it down in your own words. What did you do during the break? What did you learn? What about you has evolved through that time? And getting it clear in your head first means that you're not going to get caught off guard, because as soon as you start getting out there, and we'll talk about how to really start applying it, you're not going to stumble on your story because it's clear in your own mind and you're owning your own story, right? So, first of all, is situation. Secondly, skills. So, okay, what did I do during my break? I went traveling, okay, and I planned 6 months out in 4 countries. Right. What skills did you learn? What tech did you use to help you get there? How did you organize your time? What didn't go to plan? What solution did you come up with? So, again, what are the skills you've developed along that way? And just again, when you're writing it down on paper, just put it next to your situation. Really rough notes at the moment. And then finally, the strength. What does this show about you? So I've got my situation, I've got my skills, but what does this really show about your time out? So, for example, I took time out to care for my family. That's a situation. Check one. Skills. I manage complex responsibilities. I develop resilience, prioritization, conflict management. Right. So they're the skills that I really want to start putting onto my CV. And what strengths have I come away with that I can apply this in the real life in a career? I can make calm decisions under pressure and on my feet. So, this is all going to help you and enable you to update your CV, because one thing I will say very clearly is don't hide your break. Don't try to fluff around why you've had the time off, and just really say, yes, I had the time off. These are the skills I've developed. These are my strengths. This is what you're looking for. And I'm showing you that I have examples where I've done this before. Now, if you are returning into work, this is how we can move forward, right? So start with the small steps. Even if it's reaching out to a handful of people, you might know them from your previous jobs. Nothing, you're not asking them for anything huge. You're just saying, can we reconnect? I want to have a conversation, even if it's just over a coffee or a voice note or sending a LinkedIn message. That small momentum starts to really build the kind of confidence and the low pressure conversations, rather than going, here's an application I found online, let me just apply. Okay, and there's things that you can do. So there's online courses like LinkedIn. Again, we're still trying to build small steps to try and build back that confidence and making you feel like you're relevant. So there's projects out there, there's returners programs. And actually, in these returners programs, you can find your people. You can go to community groups where there's other people like you and that are trying to go back into the working world. And just being able to connect with a few people makes you feel like you're not on your own. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? And so that will again help you build up some of that confidence that you feel that you don't have because you've been out of the career for so long. Network, and you're probably going to hear this everywhere, but nobody's wrong in saying you have to get out there and network. So you have to be a bit more visible than you were before. And even when you're starting, it could just be one thing. Just go out, maybe just go to one event that's happening one a month, one every few months, but start attending the events because and also with the events or start commenting on socials on LinkedIn. Actually, you can see where I'm going with this is to start gaining more presence, whether it's face to face or whether it's online, because as soon as you start doing that, you're starting to rebuild some of that confidence. You're starting to feel like you're more relevant online and relevant in communities. Also, what I would say is refresh your LinkedIn before starting to go to some of these events. Really want, because the first steps we talked about were actually your situation, your skills, and your strengths. And you would have updated your CV. So update your LinkedIn. You can actually now put in a career break in LinkedIn. And that just keeps adding to the narrative of you handling that gap question because it's showing that you've owned it. You're showing that you've made value from having that break. And when you go to these network events and you start connecting with people, it aligns with the story that you're also telling them. But what I will say and be honest with is that a lot of the conversations you might be having in these communities might not go anywhere. But it's always the one or two ones that turn into successes. But even if they're not going anywhere, it's still good to practice because you'll gain a lot more confidence. And by doing some of these courses and projects, and going into networking, you can then start feeling like you've got something to talk about and be like, oh, yes, I did this online course and this is what I learned from it. And then you can start really feeling like you've got something to talk about. And the more you keep doing that, the more events you keep going to, the easier that it will become for you. You might even start making little pockets of friends in these communities. So it just becomes natural. And so put a little prompt here in terms of some of the questions that you can actually start having just in the mirror, just practicing it. It's not about getting it perfect, but the practice of it will just be so it rolls off the tongue, so it's natural. So you're stepping into that conversation and you're going, yeah, I had a break. This is what I learned though. This is what I've been doing in that time. And these are the strengths and skills. And you're really more intentional with that conversation. And one thing I also wanted to bring up is AI. So if you're worried about AI and returning back to work, and if I leave work, will I still be useful when I go back to it because AI is seemingly taking all the jobs? I wouldn't say that's the case at all, especially working in tech. I would personally use AI. Start using it as a initial pass on workshopping some of the wording and helping you come through it. Get familiar with it. don't let it hold you back from trying, because AI, the roles are reshaped rather than replaced. And I think that's obviously, it's kind of clickbait that people are saying AI is taking jobs, but actually that's not true. They are being reshaped. And unless you're also open to seeing what it can do, then that's stopping yourself from progressing. So with that, what I would say to help you feel a bit more confident with where AI is going is saying context over content. That wins all the time. And with the judgment and decision making, especially in nuanced situation, AI is very factual driven around data that it's received. One thing it cannot take away from us are our human skills. Lean into them. They're your superpower in this AI space. Yeah. Okay. Right. Let me take a sip of water. Finally, the last puzzle pieces. Okay, people, celebrate the small steps. There's no denying that putting yourself out there, it's hard. I feel it every time that I want to look for a new role. It's not the easiest thing to do. But before you know it, with all of the small steps that you would have done, with all of the casual conversations, networking conversations, community events, everything that you would have attended, you will realize that you've grown and you're a lot more confident, and it just becomes second nature. So celebrate the small steps. If you sent an email and an introductory email, that counts. If you reached out to somebody new on LinkedIn, that counts. If you've done the kind of the situation, skills, and strengths write out, that counts. Everything that you're doing, moving the needle forward, even if it's just as small, it all counts. It's evidence that you're moving forward, that you aren't staying in the same position you were yesterday. Back yourself and the next chapter, okay? So with that, now I know we probably need to get into a Q&A soon, Naomi, don't we? But actually what I want to do is leave you with some quotes, okay? So careers aren't linear anymore. Gen Zs are proving to us that it's the new normal, and they're part of a sustainable success. You become such a different person and you realize the growth through it. And lastly, the story you tell yourself matters more than the timeline, right? It's not the end of your CV, it's not the end of your career, but it's about owning your story, and you are the writer in the next chapter. Nobody else can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Harpreet. That was super interesting, and I'm sure it was very reassuring to people that have are on a career break or about to take one. So thank you so much. I have a few questions that have come in. So this one actually touches on what we discussed earlier around thinking you've made a mistake when you have a career break.
Yeah.
So the question is, did you ever have a moment during your break where you thought you'd made a mistake? But more importantly, how did you manage those feelings?
Right. In the interest of us being honest, I had a little cry. And yes, I did feel like I did make a mistake, but also I thought, you know what? Up to this point, I have gained all of these skills. I have done all of this work. I am not the only person in this situation. And what I've built up over time will be relevant to a company, will be relevant to a team, but it's just finding that right team. So, yeah, there was a lot of self-talk and a lot of kind of patting myself on the back. But I think it always starts with the going, oh gosh, why did I do this? And then going, okay, we've done this now. Let's try and use this to our advantage. And like I was saying before, is having that vision for myself. And I think those frameworks really help me because it keeps me honest. Having that vision, what do I want for myself? Because this is about me and my career and my future. What am I doing to get there? And am I doing the right stuff? And then what is my rule set to allow that stuff coming in?
Thank you. And then some of our questions have been around the negative or feeling like there's a negative perception around career breaks. Someone's asked, it feels like no matter what reason you have for a career break, you shouldn't take one. How did you manage dealing with the negative perception around taking one? So did you experience any negativity?
I did. And some of it I had to justify myself to say, yes, I've had a career break, but in my time, I've also been productive with it. And I think it's also saying I am a different person. I've grown. So you don't have to worry about me trying to learn myself on your dime because a lot of, especially the younger generation, they're still trying to figure themselves out, right? But that time has enabled me to really sit firm in who I am. And then when you're going into a role, you're giving them everything that you have rather than just slices.
I do think as well that people probably don't realize how many people do or have taken career breaks. So
Yeah,
actually, maybe you go into an interview or you add to your CV that there's been a break and you think it might be a negative thing, but actually, I think people are more understanding than you realize.
agreed. And just with some of the stuff that I was showing earlier with, yes, I've had a career break, but actually this is what skills and strengths I have. And even in your covering letter to be like, I know I've had a career break, but actually you're looking for this kind of person. And it might not be a similar way in terms of how I've learned it, but I am that kind of person that you're looking for. So it's also tapping into selling yourself,
Yeah,
which can be difficult sometimes. I know I've definitely had issues sometimes.
for sure. When you've had some time out as well, it can be slightly
Yeah.
harder, for sure. And then this is quite a difficult question because again, we discussed this earlier around, knowing when the right time is to stop the break and go back,
Yeah.
but also, giving yourself enough time to do what
Mm.
you need to in that break. So we've had a question, how long is a reasonable career break, and when do you know when it's time to end that break?
I don't think there's the right answer for everyone because financially, how long can you have a career break for? And mentally or health wise, is there something that's stopping you from going back into it? And so you might have the natural reason or the kind of natural time. So for me, it was very much compensation. So I was trying to get back into it so I didn't feel the burden of not being financially compensated. But for other people, that might not be the case. They might just feel like mentally the burnout is still looming.
Yeah.
So have a check-in with yourself if that is the case. Maybe check in with yourself in a month, in a 2 months' time, and say, am I ready to go back into that working world? And it might even be, yes, I am, but I don't want to go back into that industry.
Mhm.
So, really, I would say keep checking in with yourself and having those honest conversations. Where am I? Who do I want to be? And what am I doing to get there? What kind
Okay.
of life do I want to live as well? So,
Absolutely. It's about what you see your future as, right, and where you want to be and sort of what direction you need to go to take you there. So that's it.
exactly.
Um, and then we've had a question. So you mentioned returners programs during your presentation,
Yes.
but do you know or can you give any advice on where people can find them and any tips for kind of getting the best out of them?
Yeah, so I know with Salesforce, there's returner programs like Super Mums, and they aren't just for moms, they are for people that are trying to upskill in Salesforce and in tech, and kind of have a framework in terms of upskilling in the industry, having a space where they can update their CV, get mentors, and then try and apply it. And then there's also another one, if you Google them, that there are some other returners programs. But interestingly enough, I don't know the companies on the top of my head, but there are companies that do have returner programs, and they are specifically looking for people that have career breaks. So again, go into the research, see what companies really value you knowing yourself before getting back into the industry, because it does exist.
Okay, and someone's asked what helped you understand your vision, missions, and values. Did you use any specific resources, or were there any specific questions you asked yourself?
Um, I didn't use any specific resources. I think there was a lot of reading that happened. Um, I read a lot, so there's a lot of self-development books, a lot of Brene Brown and Mel Robbins, and I think just with those initial prompts of those questions, it was okay, so where can I see myself going? What do I want to do? What do I want to be? And then just diving into it a little deeper because of those books really help you be open in your mindset is go, okay, but where in the industry do I want to be? Where in the tech do I want to be? So just keep breaking it down a little bit more until you're satisfied with your own answer.
Okay, perfect. And then just going back to the direction you want to take after your career break, so assessing where you want to
Hmm.
be, how you're going to get there. If someone's asked, if your purpose is to find a career you genuinely love and enjoy, but you find it really difficult to get there, and you don't find it during your career break, kind of what are the options and what advice would you give?
Sorry, could you repeat the first bit again?
So, what if your purpose for a career break is to find a career you genuinely love and enjoy, but you still don't find this during or after your break?
Okay, so then I would ask myself, am I trying to find something that exists? What is it that I'm really looking for? So if it is work-life balance, am I trying to look for a hybrid role or am I trying to look for a remote role? So for me, one thing was work-life balance and EPAM are 100% remote. So my contract is 100% remote, but I still get the option to go into the office. So there is still an office culture there, but they aren't pushing you or forcing you to have a culture. And for me, that was a big driver, right? So it's okay, I took my time out to find that place. Have I really been intentional with the companies that I've applied for? Are they really what I'm after, or am I just applying in earnest now? Am I really sitting down with myself again, asking those lower level questions, or is this something I need to work on myself?
Okay. Um, and I know you went over this in your presentation, but we've still had lots of questions, so maybe you can recap around
Mhm.
how you present a career break positively on your CV. And I know you mentioned about the types of skills that maybe you obtained during that break, but I think a recap would be helpful. We've had lots of questions around that.
Yeah, of course, I can share my screen again if that will help. Let's get back there. So let me do this. So about reframing, and Naomi, the slides will be shared afterwards as well, won't they?
They will be, yes.
Yeah. So again, reframing, what was your situation or what is your situation and what skills have you learned? again, lean into the AI. If you say and give the AI some prompts to say, this is what I'm doing right now, these are the kind of skills that I think I've learned over time, and really start to pick out some of those ones that are aligned to the career. So, what strengths have you created or grown into during that period about having your break? So, again, I would definitely lean into your story, but also practice what your story is, because a lot of the time people get challenged on it and they don't know what to say. And it's just making sure that you're getting it right for you, because again, everyone's career breaks are different. And the reason why they go back into work, the reasons are different. So lean into that story. I think if you're feeling a negative kind of way about it, maybe you need to start reframing it for yourself first and getting it comfortable for yourself. And then you're able to lean into those gap conversations with more confidence because you know who you are and where you stand.
Yeah, and I think also just not being shy around what that gap was. Like, I just honesty is always for me the best policy, and it helps
Exactly.
people to understand your motivations for the gap and your motivations for where you want to go next. I think kind of don't kind of dress it up in any way. I think it just has to be kind of it's real life, right? Sometimes people have to take some time out for whatever reason, and I think employers and hirers understand that.
Exactly. And I think the biggest thing is if the company doesn't accept you, you're not in the right place.
Absolutely. Agree.
So I think that's one thing you've also got to be telling yourself, saying it's not the right place for me because I know my value and they don't know it.
Okay, on that note, we'll wrap things up. So thank you so much, Harpreet, for
Thank
all
you.
of the insight you've given us and sharing your personal experiences and your perspective. And thank you to everyone who joined today. We are still looking for speakers to join our webinar in June. So if you're interested, please do message us directly on Meetup. You will all receive an email later today from our marketing team with a full recording and a feedback form. And have a lovely afternoon, and we'll see you in June.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
all.
much.